Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our live session. I'm just going to give it another minute or so just to let everyone settle in and give people a chance to join, and then we'll get started probably 2 or 3 minutes past. Okay, I think we've got a good amount of people with us now, so we can get started. So, first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to our live session. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn a little bit more about Power BI Premium, per capacity license changes, and how they're going to affect everyone. Before we jump in, let me introduce you to our speakers for today's session. So, I'm Gemma, I'm the marketing manager here at Coeo, and I'm going to facilitate today's session. Next up, we have James Boother, who is our Chief Technology Officer. He leads the technical strategy at Coeo and designs data platform, AI, and business intelligence solutions for our clients. Joining him is Matt Hill, who is our Head of Technical Strategy. He leads the data and AI engagements and specializes in helping our clients to get more from Microsoft Fabric and the wider Microsoft Analytics stack. We have quite a lot of interesting content to cover today, but we will have time for some questions and a bit of a Q&A at the end. So as we go through, please feel free to pop any thoughts, questions, or points for discussion that you might have into the Q&A feature. I've just popped a little message in it, so it should have popped up for you all. With that, I think we're ready to get started. So I will hand over to our speakers, James and Matt.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'll just start very quickly with an introduction to Coeo. So we're a consultancy and managed service provider for Microsoft data and AI technologies. Our head office is in Reading in the UK, and we have a tech hub in Hyderabad in India. We've been working with Power BI since its first inception when it was in private preview, helping some UK enterprise Microsoft customers get on board with it. We've worked with it ever since that launch. And as soon as Fabric was coming to market, we've been working with Microsoft on that as well. We've been awarded with the Microsoft featured partner for Microsoft Fabric in the core product in real-time intelligence and in databases in Fabric as well. So we're very specialized in helping roll out enterprise deployments of Microsoft Fabric. We also have advanced specializations, which is an external audit that verifies our capability to deliver enterprise grade SQL Server, analytics, and AI projects using Microsoft technology. We help businesses transform with better use of data. And in order to do that, we work very closely with data leadership teams to ensure that their strategy aligns to the business objectives and the work that they're doing is going to have the maximum business impact. That usually moves on to a set of core services that we provide to our clients, migrating and modernizing databases into Azure, performing data engineering to get that data into a modern analytics platform, working on analytics models, developing solutions and visualizing that data for end business users, driving adoption of the Power BI environment, and then providing artificial intelligence services to innovate on top of that data. We underpin all of our services with a database managed service and a managed analytics service to keep analytics solutions operational 24/7. So you're probably asking, why is it now the right time to migrate from Power BI to Fabric? I thought it would be worth just looking quickly back in time to when Power BI was launched and the life cycle that it's gone through in that time. Back in May 2017, Microsoft officially announced Power BI, and then at that time, it was an add-in to SharePoint. This was the first time that Microsoft had built a modern reporting solution using visualizations that were allowing users to explore and discover data across their organization. We worked closely with a lot of organizations as they rolled out that first version. And the real design intent behind that was to get Power BI adopted across the business, and without requiring individual licenses for viewing those Power BI reports. Gen 2 came along in 2021, and it enhanced the capability that Gen 1 had led with. The requirement for a separate SharePoint license went away over that period, and it became a full-blown product in its own right. The licensing became more flexible, and additional features like faster analytics, removal of memory restrictions for the size of the data in Power BI, and better data refreshers all came along in 2021. That product continued to be enhanced through to 2024, when Microsoft took the decision that the premium capacity was going to be retired. New customers from July 2024 have not been able to purchase a Power BI premium capacity, and the last renewal for users on a EA was in February this year. I've got a bit more detail about this on the next slide. So this requirement to move from Power BI premium capacity to Fabric affects Power BI premium capacity per capacity SKUs, so the P SKUs for Power BI nodes, and these have to be consolidated into Fabric SKUs. People on pay-as-you-go and reservation SKUs available for Microsoft Fabric, with the ability to accrue against their Azure commits. For new customers, as I mentioned on the last slide, the Power BI premium capacity SKUs were removed from sale on the 1st of July of 2024. So new customers already having to purchase Fabric instead of premium per capacity. And existing customers without an enterprise agreement with Microsoft were able to renew their Power BI premium capacity until the 1st of January this year. Customers that have a renewal after the 1st of January this year do need to replace their Power BI premium capacity license with a Fabric SKU at the end of their existing agreement, whatever date that anniversary is. And customers without with an EA can continue to renew their P SKU purchase annually until the end of their EA agreement. If the end of the existing EA agreement is after the 1st of January 2025, they will have to transition to an F SKU at the time that that agreement ends. And Microsoft does allow customers to migrate to Fabric earlier than the date of the end of their EA agreement if they wish to. There are a lot of users that are not affected by this, so I think it's worth just calling that out now. So if you're only accessing the Power BI service using the Power BI Pro license model per user, then at this time you're not affected. You can continue working with the Power BI Pro license against the Power BI service as you've been up until this point. Likewise, if you're using the Power BI premium capacity per user license, you can continue using that as well. I have had scenarios where people have asked me about migrating their Power BI server. This is the on-premises server. Typically, that is licensed through your SQL Server licensing, and that remains completely unaffected. The only point to note is that it is possible to license your Power BI server through your Power BI per capacity license. If you were doing this, the UI now obviously moves into Fabric because you'll have a Fabric SKU now, and you'll be able to find your license key in the Fabric UI moving forwards. The other people that are unaffected are people that are running a Power BI premium capacity deployed on a sovereign cloud. And Microsoft haven't given an end date at this time for where the Power BI premium capacity on the sovereign cloud will continue until, but it will continue as long as there isn't a equivalent Fabric service available across all of those sovereign clouds. So once that is rolled out, I anticipate that there'll be a retirement date for Power BI Premium per capacity in the sovereign cloud at that time. But for now, it's not a concern for you if you're running in that scenario. So we've mentioned the reason that you now need to move. It's driven by the licensing requirements, but it's not just a like for like change. Fabric is significantly more feature rich than Power BI was. And so I'm going to hand over to Matt now, and he'll be able to talk you through what the additional features that will be available to you will be as you move into Fabric.
Thanks, James. So you're just taking a step back and just kind of outlining what Microsoft Fabric is. Obviously, Microsoft Fabric, although it's going to be 2 years old this November, in general availability, it is fairly new in terms of the Microsoft platform. So Microsoft Fabric is actually Microsoft's first of a kind, where they've now provided an all-in-one unified platform as software as a service. And it does, and it's illustrated on the next slide, it does integrate now separate components that you may be familiar with in the Azure service into one cohesive stack. This significantly simplifies kind of the architecture, where you don't have to now deploy so many individual separate services to make up your analytics platform. It is just literally all in one consumable platform, which is fantastic. And as JB's mentioned, obviously it does provide a lot more than just Power BI. So obviously Power BI is your reporting platform. However, now Fabric does also provide workloads such as data engineering, data factory, data science capabilities, data warehousing. So this is where effectively we're now bringing in the Synapse platform into Fabric, providing both the Spark engine if you work in a notebook scenario, and also a data warehouse scenario to support SQL workloads. And as I said before, it's all in one single platform. And each workload is tailored for distinct user roles. So there is a very deep granular security model within Fabric, and so there is the ability to set the permission and user access specifically for their roles or experiences, as what it's also referred to, where people can only do the roles and have access to the artifacts within Fabric that they should only have. And then building on that, there is also deep kind of governance now within Fabric. So kind of touching on Purview to a degree, where there is now data discovery and governance capability within the Fabric platform now. And so now we're starting to see deeper integration between other services within the Microsoft ecosystem. And then this just illustrates kind of the Fabric platform in terms of what actually is within that single platform. And as we mentioned before, the different experiences now, and there's quite a lot of them now, are all available, and there are some familiar names that you may have seen already before. So Data Factory, this is a service that's been around for a while. This is now built into the platform, and this is your pipelines for data ingestion and moving data from source into its target location, which is in Fabric's case OneLake, or directly into a SQL database that can run also in the Fabric workload. There's data engineering, and so this is building on the Spark platform, the Spark engine, that you can leverage within Fabric. Very notebook driven, so typically Python is the language that's used to work on notebooks in Fabric. And then there's also the data warehouse capability as well, so the kind of more tabular-like structured data stores that supports the T-SQL language. There's data science capability, so this is integrating out into kind of OpenAI, so Azure Foundry, and also having the ability to run solutions such as machine learning models in the Fabric platform as well. There's real-time intelligence, so this is supporting real-time scenarios, so things like event streaming and event-driven data movements, and there's that capability within the platform. As I mentioned before, you can host SQL databases now, so you can support OLTP workloads within the Fabric platform, which works in the same way as Azure SQL database. And then, as we've already covered, there's also now Power BI that falls under Fabric, and Fabric is SKU based, and so it replicates the premium capacity SKU based model, where an F64 is an equivalent to a P1, and then you go up to match the corresponding P SKUs that you might be running at the moment. All of those workloads are underpinned by OneLake. OneLake is the new storage that comes with Fabric. And as the name suggests, the concept of OneLake is that you have one OneLake for the organization. So it is a one-to-one mapping with your Microsoft Entra ID. And the purpose is that it removes the data silos that you often find in organizations. And the whole idea is that it brings it together and provides that single unified storage platform, making data accessible to everyone in the organization. And as I've mentioned, from a data governance perspective, there is deep integration now with Microsoft Purview, providing that data discovery and data governance capabilities. Okay, so just to cover kind of the migration approach, so coming back to obviously migrating Power BI Premium to an FSKU now. So Coeo's approach in this is first to identify and assess the Power BI workspace that are required to migrate. Now, this provides a great opportunity to do a bit of housekeeping and to actually identify those actual workspaces that are required. Often what we find when we start doing this kind of discovery and assessment piece is that there's certain reports that are very similar to other reports, and so there is a consolidation and kind of deprecation activity that can be done to reduce the number of artifacts that are needed to migrate. And the same for workspaces as well. Sometimes there are some dormant workspaces that are no longer accessed and used, and all of that information can be captured through the Power BI Admin Center, where we can actually see report metrics around who and how frequently reports have been accessed and used, and use that as a good guide to identify those reports that could possibly not require migrating across. Just to cover all aspects, what we do encourage is backing up all items. So should we actually identify certain reports or items that don't need migrating, and you do after migration get someone panicking that there is no longer that report in a workspace, then obviously because we've backed up all items, we are able to recover that and migrate that across. So, you know, that is our safety net. Although I will come on to some of the reasons why we do back up in all instances anyway, because sometimes the migration is not as simple as just reassigning the workspace. There are manual migrations involved in certain scenarios. So backing up everything just provides us that safety check when we come to do the migration. There are some refactoring that's required in certain cases. For example, if you're using Gen 1 data flows within Power Query to move data into your Power BI data model, then Gen 1 data flows are not supported within Fabric. And so in that case, you do have to create Gen 2 data flows and refactor those pipelines to work under the Gen 2 data flows. Not significant amounts of effort, but if you've got a lot of them, we do need to factor that in, because when you migrate, they won't work and all your refreshes will fail. And there are some other things such as Power BI data marts now. They are actually being retired this month. And if you haven't already, if you are using them and you haven't already seen them go, they will start disappearing this month. And so they will also need to be refactored as well. And then we actually perform the migration. So there's a couple of options in how we do this. There is some tooling provided by Microsoft in GitHub that can help you do this via scripting and using the REST APIs in Fabric to do the migration. Or there is also, depending on how many you've got, there is the manual route as well. It does get a little bit complex in terms of what you can use if you're having to move regions, and we'll come on to that a bit later. But in part, there's kind of two options. You can manually migrate or use tooling. And then obviously it's just a case of reallocating the capacity against your workspaces to move them across when we do the migration. Another key part of the migration is having this period of being able to monitor the Fabric performance, and within Fabric there is an admin area that allows you to monitor the performance and look at the capacity metrics around the SKU you're using. There are certain things that you had in Premium that you don't in Fabric, such as auto scaling. So again, it's really important that, you know, certainly around the refreshing of data sets and high usage patterns, that the SKU is monitored very closely, because it could behave differently from a performance perspective than what you're used to in the P SKU. And so there may require, you know, your SKUs to be reviewed, and potentially a strategy to either go down a multi SKU route, or to actually increase to the next SKU up to support peak patterns within refreshing and report usage. So we strongly recommend that, you know, over well, it should be best practice just in general, but, you know, certainly after that initial migration, close monitoring of the usage and performance is strongly recommended. There's a great article on the Microsoft website written by David Mitchell that sort of just outlines the different options from a migration perspective, and obviously we will provide this link after the webinar. But this kind of illustrates the options in terms of actually migrating quite nicely. So kind of the green box is the nice simple path. If you're operating within the same region and you're just moving from the P SKU to the F SKU, then it is essentially as easy as reassigning either through the UI or using the tooling, as I mentioned, which operates over the REST API. There are some steps in the middle, as I've already mentioned, about certain features that might have to be refactored in order for that migration to be more seamless. But that's kind of the easy path. Where it gets a little bit challenging is if you want to use this as an opportunity to move region, and that does make it a little bit more complex, because it does mean that you can't use the manual reassigning through the UI. So that means that you have to create a new SKU in a new region, and then actually deploy all of the items into that new SKU, either using the tooling that I've suggested, or, you know, because we've backed it up, we can actually manually upload those into the new SKU, and that is possible. But again, it's a case of we have to think about why we're doing it, and, you know, do we need to go down a multi-region route? And I think it's fair to say that, you know, when we start doing this, if we just want to focus on Power BI, that's fine. But because Fabric offers so much more, and if you want to take advantage of all of the other features in Fabric, there is planning that's required up front to really think about where my workspaces or where my regions of the workspaces are located. Look at kind of that capacity and planning, and look at kind of the SKUs. Obviously, you have to go to an F64 in order for Power BI Premium to work, and so that does often require a dedicated SKU that we've seen people deploy purely to do the migration. And then if they want to take advantage of the other Fabric features, then often they provision a smaller SKU dedicated to the Fabric workloads to keep those separate, so there's no impact in terms of SKU usage that could impact reporting. So we just kind of wanted to share, obviously we've done this for quite a few customers, and we kind of just wanted to share some of the common pitfalls that we've seen across these different engagements that we've delivered. And as I've mentioned, kind of treating Fabric SKUs the same as Power BI Premium is not probably the right approach to take. We have seen customers that have kind of done it off their own back, and then have sort of reached out to us to sort of ask our advice in terms of things aren't what they seemed, and a lot of it is down to the fact that if you are just wanting to use Power BI features, then there is the ability to create a workspace which uses the license mode of sort of Power BI Premium, and it will just lock it down to the Power BI features. However, if you, as I said, want to take advantage of the Fabric features, then there is some planning involved, especially from a security perspective, because obviously it does give people the ability to create other Fabric artifacts like data warehouses, lake houses, and again, from a governance perspective, you do want to control what people can do, and that's why we say we often operate in a multi-workspace deployment, so that we can actually isolate the workloads, user permissions, access, etc., and not impact reporting and other workloads as well. Second pitfall is underestimating the kind of capacity planning and the migration window. So it's really important that I mentioned that once you start the migration, or once you give notice in terms of your premium SKU and you're going to the Fabric F SKU, you get a 90-day migration window, which means you get 90 days to migrate your Power BI workspaces, reports, data sets from the premium SKU over into the F SKU. After the 90 days, what happens is your Power BI Premium SKU gets downgraded to Pro, which means that if you're licensing users under the premium capacity, which often you are, then they won't have access to those reports. And then also, if you're using any premium features, if you've got data models that are over 1 gig in size, etc., obviously refreshes will start failing, and it won't be business as usual. So 90 days is quite generous, and obviously if you've got a much larger estate, that's where we've certainly assisted in teams where they might have multiple premium SKUs, and we've certainly come in and kind of been an extra pair of hands to help get that migration completed in that 90-day window. And as I mentioned before, the capacity planning is really key, especially if you're going to start using other Fabric items under the same SKU. And also, if you want to use Copilot, so Copilot will actually, certainly for Power BI, will actually consume your capacity units. And so, if you're wanting to use or take advantage of Copilot within the F SKU now, that whole capacity planning does need to be really thought about, because actually we've seen instances where the use of Copilot within Power BI has impacted that capacity usage, and that has in some cases required to go up another SKU to provide them enough capacity to use both Copilot as well as the premium features of Power BI as well. So that's really important as well, to think about how you want to use that going forwards. As I said before, overlooking kind of non-Power BI migrations. So if you're not aware that Gen 1 isn't supported in Fabric, if data marts, if you're using data marts, the fact that they're being retired from this month and they will start disappearing, that's again something to be mindful of. Now, obviously, with data marts, most likely you are already planning a workaround for that, but obviously Gen 1 is still supported, so that does often catch people out. So the fact that we have to go to Gen 2 and then replicate them under the Gen 2 data flows does give you an extra step as part of your migration, just to be mindful of. This one I've already touched on, obviously ignoring the region and geo considerations. So obviously it is more difficult moving region, and so obviously in most cases, if you're operating in the same region, then just reassigning the workspace is absolutely fine. Again, if you're looking to take this as an opportunity to look at moving regions or even operating in multiple regions, then again it's all in the planning. And I think also it's not always known, but if you're going to operate in multiple regions but still want the premium capacity, you are going to have to go at a minimum of an F64 in order to take advantage of the premium capacity, the premium features of Power BI. So that's also something to be mindful of as well, certainly from a cost perspective as well. And then this one's quite important. So assuming the governance and security behave exactly like before, so that's not strictly true. So when we now move to an SKU, they've made a change. So if you're using the XMLA endpoints that come with Power BI Premium, then you just need to be mindful that by default now, the XMLA endpoints are both read and write. You can change it. So if you only want the read-only policy for the XMLA endpoints, then you just have to be mindful that you have to go in and change that because it is read write by default. So that's one that catches some people out. And the other one is also, if you are using other Fabric items, as I mentioned before, it's really important that that kind of security and governance layer is set up in advance. So we want to control who can create items, have access to certain features within Fabric. So if you are wanting to provision an F64 or above SKU and take advantage of both Fabric and Power BI Premium, then having a think about that governance and security model up front will really pay dividend, rather than waiting and then all of a sudden people are creating multiple lake houses and data warehouses, and then all of a sudden it becomes really messy and a governance nightmare. So that is something to really be mindful of from the beginning. So I'll just pass back to James, and he will just talk through a successful migration that we did for a customer of ours.
Thank you, Matt. Hopefully you've learned so far that there are a few considerations to make on the migration from Power BI to Fabric. Hopefully there's nothing too scary for you that you've seen so far, but with some careful consideration and planning, and then taking the right steps during the migration process, it's possible to successfully migrate with minimal impact to users. We had a customer come to us at the beginning of this year, and they had over 1,000 Power BI users in quite a complex Power BI deployment where there were multiple Power BI Premium nodes just distributed geographically across the world. And obviously their Power BI license was coming up for renewal because it was after January this year. And so they were asked to migrate onto Fabric. Because of the complexity of the Power BI deployment model that they had, they decided that it would be a good idea to engage with our delivery team to support them through that migration process. So the first step of that challenge was to actually identify everyone impacted by the change. So we identified all of the users with them, all of the data sets, for which there were about 500, and then there was a significant number of reports because they had done a good job at designing their architecture, so those data sets were shared across multiple reports. We also spent a bit of time doing some analysis about the best future target model for Fabric because they were already deployed across multiple regions. The consideration need to be paid to how that migration was going to take place, and the fact that there was an opportunity to move some of those Power BI artifacts into different regions that were more appropriate for the deployment model that they were using. And because of that, we went through quite a sophisticated discovery planning and then migration approach, where we carefully planned out all of the Power BI artifacts that were going to be moved from the different regions of Power BI premium capacity over onto all of the Fabric capacities that were deployed. So multiple F64 capacities were deployed across the world, and then the right reports were moved into the right F64 capacities. There was quite a bit of change management to be done because obviously users needed to be informed that their workspaces were moving and where they would access their reports from, and that guidance was given ahead of the migration. All of the migration happened in a very short period of time because we'd scripted all of the artifacts being migrated around, and then subsequent comms was shared with all of the business users that had been identified at the beginning of the process. And there were some drop-in clinics and some guidance provided for those that were moving their workspaces around. This meant that the migration could happen with minimal disruption. We managed to complete all of the work within the 30 days of notice that Microsoft had given the customer for their Power BI capacity to be turned off, and we were able to remove all of the workspaces, decommission it effectively, and make sure that all of those artifacts were carefully backed up prior to their 90-day grace period expiring. And it meant that there was virtually zero downtime of the reporting solution. The users had minimal impact as a result of it, and we spent time with the tech team once that migration had successfully completed to give them some education and support around all of the additional features they've now got access to now that they've got a global deployment of Fabric, and they're now beginning to look at how they can take advantage of the new features that they've got, such as the Copilot features that they've now got access to as a result of that migration. Just wait for the slide to move. So you can obviously engage with us to help you with a migration, and Microsoft are investing to support and make this migration as fast and as simple as possible for you. There are two forms of Microsoft investment available that can help you with this. The first is the Azure Accelerate funding, and that's essentially where Microsoft will make an investment with a Microsoft partner to buy some services to help you through that migration period. It is possible that the Microsoft funding may partially or completely fund a partner like us to engage with you and support you through that migration process. Microsoft also have an internal team called the Cloud Acceleration Factory, and that team can help you with fairly simple migrations of Power BI to Fabric. We can work with you to make sure that you're nominated for this investment from Microsoft, just to make this as simple and effective as possible for you. If you wish to engage with us and Microsoft on this, then we can put you in touch with one of our client managers that will set all of the balls in motion to help you get going with that. We've also built a service around this migration to make it as simple for you as possible. The idea is that we follow our methodology through, and we'll run an initial assessment with you, do that discovery to understand what that Power BI premium deployment looks like, all of the users that will be impacted by it, all of the Power BI artifacts that need to be considered for it. work with you to build a migration strategy to ensure that everything has been considered and planned for that migration process, run a risk assessment so that you can identify what risks might be need to be mitigated through the migration period, and then perform a seamless transition with you to make sure that you've migrated effectively from Power BI to Fabric. And we will then run a bit of training and mentoring for your team to make sure that you understand all of the benefits that you've now got available to you as a result of that migration to Fabric. I'll pass back to Gemma.
Thank you both. Some great content there. We've got a few questions in the chat, so I'll direct those to you now. So the first one is from Paul, and he's asked, what happens in a situation where one already has pipelines and warehouses set up on Synapse and Databricks? Is migrating to Fabric a necessity, and what advantage would it have?
So you can continue using Synapse and Databricks. It's actually the Power BI environment that we're looking at here. So you can, if you've got all of your data engineering happening in Synapse and Databricks, and you're presenting your reports in Power BI, you'll move all of those reports into Fabric, and you can continue using Synapse and Databricks for your data engineering and data science workloads. There is also the option, now that you've moved to Fabric, to consider consolidating all of that data engineering over into Fabric to simplify the estate that you've got deployed and bring all of that workload under one roof. But we've got many clients that are continuing to use, in particular, Databricks. They're designed to work well together, and they integrate nicely. So there is no immediate requirement to make that migration. Some of our clients find that it is beneficial to do so for simplicity and potentially for some cost benefit as well. Other clients are finding that they're quite happy running their data engineering in the current architecture that they've got. We are looking with clients around Synapse, because obviously the Spark engine from Synapse is now available within Fabric, and the Fabric environment is getting all of the R&D effort associated to it as well. So there could be some benefit in considering, if you're running Synapse today, you've also got Power BI Premium today, you're then moving your Power BI Premium to Fabric to then do the migration of Synapse into Fabric as well, and benefit from all of the new features that are available to you. Matt, do you have any other thoughts or comments on that?
No, I think you've explained it really well. I was going to do a shameful plug and say that we did do a Fabric 101 webinar last month, and we did cover some of those elements, certainly from a Synapse perspective. Although Microsoft haven't officially announced Synapse being deprecated, as James mentioned, all investments and new features are coming to Fabric, and so depending on whether there are features that you want to take advantage of, you may want to consider moving certainly Synapse over to Fabric, but it won't force you to have to move it. You can still operate as you are today.
Thank you both. Paul, I hope that answered your question. Our next question is from Neil. So he's asked, for a Power BI workspace that is migrated to Fabric, will the workspace have a new URL? And will the reports that have been shared, or for example, embedded into SharePoint, have a new URL as well?
I'm going to give a politician's answer. It depends. And the reason why it depends is based on your migration path that you take. So if you are just reassigning your workspaces, so everything stays and you're just moving from the premium capacity over to the SKU capacity, then your URLs will be the same. If you happen to create a new workspace and then redeploy your reports to the workspace, I believe the URL changes because the report ID in the URL path will change. So just be mindful of that. But typically, if you're just reassigning workspace, the URLs should remain the same.
Thank you. And then, so last question we've got is from Steve. So he's asked, in the totally hypothetical situation where we migrated a workspace to another region before switching off large storage format on some semantic models, is there a better solution than renaming or deleting all affected models to remove the storage setting and then republishing them?
I'm just reading the question.
Yeah, bit of a mouthful.
So I'm assuming in this case that the large storage format was chosen, but the semantic models weren't actually large enough that they needed to be a large storage format model. And so in this hypothetical scenario, the team took the approach of deleting the artifact and then recreating it in Power BI so it could then be migrated with the migration tools. So that's absolutely valid, and that's an approach that you could take. Where we saw this being a challenge for our clients is that they were actually using some very large models. So this option wasn't available to them. So what we did in that case was essentially script out the definition of the model, script that into the destination workspace, and then republish that model so that it could refresh its data behind it and then connect the report back up to the model. And then that allowed the that large model to actually get moved from Power BI into Fabric. Matt, have you got any more thoughts on that?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of another scenario, but I think no, I don't.
And there was actually one question very early on that I answered in the chat that it may just be worth us discussing here, which is Purview covered in all SKUs? And I answered it on the chat saying that Fabric absolutely has some data security and data governance capabilities built into it. It also has a deep integration into Purview, which is enhancing and improving all of the time as the roadmap develops in both Purview and in Fabric. But Purview is actually a separate product, and it has a separate pricing model associated to it. So if you wish to get all of the data governance and data compliance and data security features of Purview, then you will need to purchase the Purview subscription alongside your Fabric subscription. And in the chat, I did put a link to the pricing for Microsoft Purview. Matt, I just wondered if you had any other thoughts around that.
No, you're right. So obviously they are separate products and you have to sort of almost do all of the setup and configuration within Purview, but with the integration, kind of Fabric honors Purview. So things like sensitivity labeling, the integration around there is that actually Fabric can you can actually apply security depending on the sensitivity labeling, and that will filter right through Fabric. So that's one example of the integration. Same with kind of data loss preventions. If you've got highly sensitive classification on data, then also that can filter through, and that governance kind of is almost seamless. But it's everything set up within Purview, the policies, everything, and then Fabric integrates into Purview.
Thank you. And we've had one more question come in from Liam in the chat. So he's asked, we currently use embedded Power BI reports that appear on a customer-focused portal. Do we need to reset up all access permissions and secret keys in the new environment?
If you're reassigning, no. If you're just reassigning the workspace from PSKU to FSKU, no. If you're deploying new and then having to, if you're spinning up a new SKU and deploying all of the content back into that SKU, then yeah, things like report IDs, etc., will change, and then there is a bit more work that's needed in order for that to work. Yeah.
Matt, the other consideration around this is that they might be using an A SKU for Power BI embedded.
Yeah.
My understanding is that that is still available, so that doesn't need to be migrated in, although you can now use Fabric for Power BI embedded workloads as well. So you may choose to migrate off your A SKU into your F SKU, because you're then consolidating the consumption model down, and you might get a more cost-effective solution using an F SKU over an A SKU.
Correct. Yeah. So it's probably worth just expanding on that. So from a licensing perspective, report viewers will be licensed under the premium and or F SKU now, like it was in the premium. And then obviously you still have to, like you do with the premium SKU, buy pro licenses for report authors and creators that are deploying content to Power BI. So that whole modeling structure still remains the same. There's no change there.
Thank you. I think that's all of our questions for now, so we can end it there. So thank you everyone for attending. We will be sharing the slides and the recording with you this afternoon when it's all processed. We'll also be sharing a link, a slide with some helpful links on it, so you can look into it a bit more. And if you have any following questions following up from this session, you can drop us a message off the back of that email as well. I'd just like to thank James and Matt for being our speakers for today, and I hope to see you all on the next live session.